Hey Thomas, I just got home last night. I'm still a little jet lagged, but I wanted to thank you for the discussion that we did have. Um, I was out in San Francisco to find a place to live because I'm going to school there um, at the California Institute of Integral Studies to study philosophy, religion, among other things. And uh, we discussed a lot of things, but certainly the evolution of culture was one of them. And you brought up Richard Dawkins' idea of mimetic evolution, and he formulated this towards the end of his first book. I believe it was his first book, The Selfish Gene, and it was more of a possible application of natural selection on the biological level to the human cultural level. Dawkins didn't mean for it to be taken seriously as a legitimate area of academic or scientific research, but it certainly has become that. Um, and while I appreciate and respect it as a perspective, I don't think that we can look to it as an explanation for how culture works because it's basically an attempt to explain human consciousness without referring to consciousness. In other words, the ideas that we have, the political philosophies that we believe in and fight for, and you know, music, whatever the cultural medium of exchange might be, it's reduced from the mimetic perspective to uh, basically mimicry, to a human being hearing a certain way of wording something, and for whatever biological reason, neurological reason perhaps, liking it, adopting it, and then repeating it such that it spreads with a small bit of variation along the way, of course, and this is why we can apply natural selection from the biological realm to the cultural. Um, because, of course, for evolution from the mechanistic perspective to be possible, you need not only repetition but small variation. Otherwise, there is no change, there is just continual repetition. Um, but I have a hard time figuring out where human intention, human meaning, human purpose, and so forth fit into the mimetic picture. Because, as I said, it seems like an attempt to explain human consciousness without reference to human consciousness. Um, and so it really doesn't explain what it's trying to explain. It it takes a certain perspective on human consciousness, human culture. Um, and by consciousness, I mean in the sense that you've talked about before, Thomas, as a co-gnosis, a knowing together, a knowing with, not just an individual subjective mind. Because culture is something that we share. It's not something that I or you or anybody else as an individual uh, concocts from nothing, from their own imagination. Certainly on a collective level, it is the imaginations of individual human beings that sustains and passes culture along, but it requires all of us to do that. Um, and we need to go deeper, I think, than memes. As useful as they are, maybe as a heuristic to sort of get a grasp on, the very basic level at which this cultural evolutionary process might work. Um, when you look at consumerist culture and television advertisement and uh, much of how culture has become commodified in the past 50 or 60 years since TV really became a mainstay, it does seem like the mimetic picture is rather accurate. That people are just consumers of cultural information. They mimic it, and they enact it by um, repeating it with their peers, and so it spreads. But it seems to me that this downplays, meaning, purpose, as I said before, but also creativity. Um, the degree to which human beings don't just repeat the past, or at least are capable of more, or capable of great shifts in understanding that happen rather quickly. The biological term would be punctuated equilibrium, where it seems that when you look at the fossil record, evolution isn't this slow, gradual process, but because of some crisis, food shortage, or meteorite impact, or what have you, many species are forced into a kind of bottleneck where only those who can find ways to survive and adapt to the new environment, which is usually harsher than the one in the past, only those organisms will survive. And it seems that human beings may be pushing themselves into a similar scenario where certain forms of human culture will no longer be sustainable, no longer adapted to the environment that they will be faced with. And a lot of us new paradigm thinkers, you could say, we are trying to see a more holistic science be born, or a more holistic picture of evolution. It's rather ironic that we're faced with a situation now where it is really going to be a survival of the fittest kind of scenario, where we may see our population stressed because of lack of food, lack of shelter as the climate changes, and it won't be survival of each individual organism for him or herself, but more so survival of each community for itself. The communities that can live cooperatively, grow their own food, take care of the essentials of life, will be the communities which survive and prosper even. And those communities, or those collections of individuals that can't commune, won't be able to survive. For the last couple hundred years with industrialization and so forth, and really just the last 50 years, in developed Western countries, people have been able to live on their own and go to the grocery store and buy their own food and sustain themselves as discrete individuals without having to rely, at least on the face of it, on their community, even though the industrial infrastructure is certainly a communal enterprise. It's kind of an unconsciously communal enterprise. But in the future, this isn't going to be possible. People will not survive if they are alienated from the people around them, because it does seem like we're moving into an era where we will need to regain a sense of connection to the place in which we live, the people with whom we live. And it's unfortunate that it might require a great sacrifice, in the sense that I'll just come out and say it, many people may die, and it is pessimistic. But let's be honest about the situation that we're in, and the creek we found ourselves up without a paddle, so to speak. But there is reason to be optimistic, because I think there is still hope for the human spirit, human creativity, human love and community, and all of these positive aspects of Homo sapiens. Hopefully those will shine through in this crisis, and we will meet the challenges that evolution has in store for us. But thanks again, Thomas, for our discussion in person, and for your video here, and I hope there's many more to come in the future. Can't wait to move out to San Francisco for good. Take it easy.